All right. Hey, we're back. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Dimension Fold. And today we have a special guest, Joey Madia, who is a host himself, and as well as a very creative guy and paranormal researcher. And I think he has a lot of cool stuff that we can talk about. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah. And we'll try and go for about an hour and hopefully not run too much longer. But you know how it is sometimes with these shows, we can't stop ourselves. Uh, so, Joey, I was talking to you a little while ago, and I can't remember the specifics, but something strange happened to you and your wife, I believe it was several years ago.
Yeah, so it was 14 years ago now, or it will be in August, and it was in August of 2009. Long story short, we had seen a movie a few years before that we really kind of liked, called Mothman Prophecies.
Mm,
And Mark Pellington, who directed, is an excellent director, had terrific soundtrack. To me, one of the best things Richard Gere's ever done. Laura Linney was in it. Will Patton, really great cast. And at the end of the movie, it says, based on true events. And I said, wow, like Mothman is a very odd thing. So we looked it up. Wow, this really is a very, so we read John Keel's book, and we weren't even, I mean, my wife had experiences her entire life. I had a weird experience with a Ouija board at 16. Um, there were some ghosts or some activity around our property, but we weren't like into the paranormal, certainly not like we are now.
right.
And so my wife called me one day and she said, and we had bought property shortly after in West Virginia near Morgantown, near the university, and 3.5 acres, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And my wife called me one day and she said, like, we're only like 2.5 hours away from the Mothman Museum, like in the
Right.
town where the story happened. And I said, this is like patently ridiculous. Like, how could you even have a museum? She said, well, consider it like a weekend getaway to the Ohio River. We'll get away, get a sitter for the kids. So we did that. And we really fell in love with the town. I love that town to this day. I have an escape room ready to open, anytime at the Mothman Museum. I've written a couple plays about it, weird. Um, so we do the rounds, we do the museum, we talk to some people, we go into a great little shop that isn't there anymore called The Point. And it was run by a guy named Bob Landrum. And Bob kind of was like Elvis and Johnny Cash had a love child. Like Bob was super coy. He had a DA and he had his cigarettes rolled up in his t-shirt. And he kind of talked with a drawl like this. He's like, I don't know what anybody told you, but you need to go like here. And he draws on the map and he's like, it's an old Indian burial ground. So you got to bring some sage. So we buy some sage from him. And suddenly I'm like, this is interesting. And he's got this orb that he claims has an Indian chief inside it, like a Shawnee Indian chief. And I'm going, okay, this has gotten like super interesting. So my writing senses are alive. So we
Good.
get in our car, we drive down 62 out of town, and we go to the TNT area. Probably in this day and age, most people have heard of it. Concrete igloos, there's over 100 of them, but there's 3 or 4 that are easily accessible. And so we have our map and we have our sage and we go down there, and it's like 2:30 in the afternoon, maybe 2:45. And we get out of the car down there and by the guardrail for people who've been down there before, down the alley, what they call igloos 1, 2, and 3. And we get hit with this wave of fear. Like, what the hell? Because it's a beautiful August day. It's mid-August, and it's beautiful. It's nature. I grew up in the Pine Barrens, right, home of the Jersey Devil, and riding my bike there, and dead end streets. And my life as a kid was kind of like Stand By Me in North Jersey, and then it was
Right.
the Pine Barrens and the Jersey Devil in the South. And I was, I'd been camping and hunting and da-da-da. And I was like, this is terrible. Like, what is going on here? So we crossed the liminal zone, the threshold into the non-ordinary world. And we're walking down this lane towards the first igloo. And at the time, we have like a handheld digital camera. And I'm like, wow, we got to get some pictures of these igloos. It's so weird, these concrete igloos. And there's water there. And you can't hear any animals. You can't see any animals, birds. There's no ducks, nothing. It's blue sky, though. Weird.
So these, sorry, just to interject.
Yeah,
So these igloos were a World War II storage bunker?
Exactly. There was the North Power Plant, they called it, but it was the Ordnance Works, and they manufactured TNT. They put it in there, and then they did these concrete bunkers, which they put earth over in case there was a flyover. You wouldn't be able to see them, right? Sorry about that.
Yep.
So, and then it became a super fun site, right? Because it leached out, and I guess it was 2014. One of the igloos exploded. Like there was some unstable gunpowder or something that was being stored in there. It was crazy. It was either 2010 or 2014. But anyway, snap a picture. We get about halfway down to the second igloo, and it's like my stomach is starting to hurt. I'm feeling nauseous. We really feel like we're in danger. So we leave the sage outside the second igloo. When I say outside, probably 5 feet before it in the woods, and we hightail it the hell out of there. We get into the car. We're driving down 62, and we're trying to process beauty versus fear. And this is before we really understood John Keel's zone of fear, right? That just that weird high, paranormal high strangeness spot that really gets you. Right. As it turns out, I was like a human EMF meter. I used to entertain people down at the igloos because between igloos 2 and 3, I would almost like vomit just because the energy was so crazy. And after the explosion, it kind of calmed down. And now when I go down there, don't get much of all. So anyway, we're driving in the car, and, kind of always say to people, if it hadn't been for a very strange thing, we probably would not be here. We wouldn't have the books, the show, nothing. We turn to each other out of nowhere as we're going down 62, and we both say the exact same thing. Did you see that? It was really bizarre. Then I hear this like little voice in my head go, don't tell each other what you saw. Just draw it, right? So yeah, it was bizarre. It was the weirdest thing. And it seemed to take forever to kind of get back to town. It's like, boy, this is, and I see this really cool gas station that I had missed on the way out. And it's got the blue and yellow and red and green pennants. Like it's, having a special event. Really neat, like antiquated garage, gas station, but in line with the stuck in time nature of Point Pleasant. Yeah. So we get back to town, and there's nobody around. It should be about 3 o'clock because it's only about a 20-minute drive, and we were there all of 10, 12 minutes. There's nobody around. So we go back to Bob's. We go back to the point, and I knock on the door, and he's in the back doing something. And we glance down. I think Tanya had a cell phone or something, and we realize it's like 5:30. So like 2.5 hours are gone.
Yeah.
What the hell? This is like weird. This is weird. We couldn't have been down there that long. So we go inside and we say to Bob, like, we saw this really weird thing and we're going to draw it and we don't know what the hell it was. He's like, oh, maybe you encountered the Indian chief. So he asked for a business card and he says, I know these 2 brothers and they're investigators. They might be interested in talking to you. I was like, okay, and Tanya and I, we went to this restaurant. We went to the Iron Horse restaurant, Iron Horse or Iron Gate. It's down the end by the Trestle Bridge for people who are familiar with Point Pleasant. It's been closed for a long time. And we draw basically the same thing.
Oh, wow.
Which is also kind of bizarre, right? So you got the cornfield on one side and the thing looks exactly the same. It's the same point of view. Well, we're just astonished, but we're kind of newbies. We're overwhelmed. And, I think this is kind of an artifact of these kind of events. We just sort of forget about it. We go back to our lives. This was August. November, we get a phone call. This is John Frick, my brother, and Tim and I people may be familiar with them. And we'd really like to talk to you. Would you be willing to come back down to Point Pleasant? And we're like, we loved it. And I wanted to write a play about the town and this very weird thing and the collapse of the bridge in 67. And also we go back down and Rosemary Ellen Guiley gets involved and these other investigators get involved and they all come down. They drive the route with us. They bring this exotic equipment, EMF meters and, you know, all these things, temperature guns. And we find out a couple of really weird things. There's no gas station. Okay, that's
What?
the first thing. There's no gas station on that stretch, and there never has been. There has been. Now, one host said, well, maybe there's going to be in the future, but we think it's something else. And then we go to where we distinctly remember. Now, the weird thing is we only each drew one cornfield on the right side of the road, but we distinctly remember a cornfield on the left side of the road. This thing emerges, right? That black thing. I've always said it's like looks like a man in a neoprene wetsuit getting shot out of a cannon. Tanya describes it more of like crouching and launching like a deer. But whatever it was, it emerged from the cornfield, jumped over the road, and like blinked out of existence right at the edge of the cornfield on the right side. When we go there, yeah, there's a cornfield on the right side. On the left side, there's a house that's been there for dozens of years. So Rosemary Ellen Guiley and these other investigators are going, okay, you got missing time, you got space-time distortion, you have a building that wasn't there, which could be a parallel dimension. They're finding evidence of a portal. It's right adjacent with the AEP, I think, power plants. Which is really neat. If you've ever been down to Point Pleasant at night, they have two red lights. And it kind of looks like the Mothman's eyes up in the sky. Yeah. It's very neat. And so all these things add up. So suddenly people have taken an interest in us. I don't know. All we know is we love the town. We want to go back. We do. Rosemary winds up mentoring us for 10 years. Sometimes we talk about this thing. People want to know, hey, you know, like, how'd you get involved in all this and all that? But we're pretty much students of Rosemary, not doing much. 2016, 2017, by this time, Tanya's gotten her massage, her Reiki. She's doing tarot readings. She's her psychic mediumship. When she got her Reiki attunement, suddenly she's seeing dead people and having conversations with them. We have a daughter who by that time is like a teenager, early teens. She's having weird dreams. She's seeing dead people. Like our life is beginning to change. We moved down to North Carolina, and long story short, we wind up doing a 2-year investigation of a library. So we have all this training from Rosemary. We have all this field experience, plus Tanya's abilities and all of this. And it culminates in a book called Watch Out for the Hallway, our 2-year investigation of the most haunted library in North Carolina. This library closed last year, tragically. It was called the Webb Memorial Libraries in Morehead City. We spent 75 nights, about 150 to 170 hours. We brought in 525 guest investigators, so sort of an open investigation. We would do a blog. Yeah, and I guess maybe 5-6% of them were either sensitives who didn't know they were sensitives, or psychics, mediums, all different kinds of things. Clairaudience, clairvoyance, which was terrific for Tanya and for our child Joe, because they were like, okay, we're getting all this confirmation about what we're seeing, what we're collecting, and weird things, Ken, with interdimensional beings and MIBs, spectral MIBs, UFOs. Meanwhile, Rosemary's writing about all this stuff in her books, and we're going to Point Pleasant, we're presenting and all of this. And so the book comes out, and we've had all this experience. So once the book comes out, we start doing the circuit. So We're talking to, I think, Dave Schrader, Midnight in the Desert. And he's like, this is 2018, I think. And he says, hey, have you ever had, hypnotic regression? He said, never occurred to us. No one's ever suggested it in all these years. No one's ever said, hey, what about those 2.5 missing years? I think maybe Rosemary and Tanya sort of felt if we didn't remember it, we weren't meant to remember. I don't know. So we were thinking about it. But as circumstance would have it, Tanya had just gotten her certification in hypnosis, and she was enrolled in a program at the Edgar Cayce Institute, past lives, soul contact, hypnotic regression. So we go, okay, well, we understand this. It seems safe. We arrange for us each to do it. And that's, I've been talking a lot. I don't know if you want to, or if you want me to keep going.
It's good. Keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So I get regress first. I'll try to be as quick as possible here. When we were down at the second igloo, there was this being that I described sort of like the cave drawing of Shaman Man, that old cave drawing, which I've always been fascinated with, but looking a little weird, blah, blah, blah. Well, again, the circumstances would have it. My college roommate was doing sketches for some of the reality shows with the psychics and whatnot. And we sent him and I think 7 other, like the Fricks and some of the other people early on, and other people we met along the journey. We sent them the transcripts of my regression and Tanya's regression. Said, do you think there's anything to this? We don't know what to do with it. We're sort of the ghost and spirit people. People understand that. This is all weird for us. And they're like, no. And he said, let me draw what you saw. And this is it.
Wow.
Yeah, this was it. Yeah, right on. So kind of deer, but kind of goat, but the weird eyes, very alien. And then it's cut off in this, unfortunately. This is one of its fingers, but it had 3 long fingers. And I would describe it to people like when we were kids, we used to put black olives on the ends of our fingers, at Christmas dinner, right, at the kids' table. And it was kind of like that. So apparently we saw this dude. Then this is where it gets.
Was he walking upright or
he was just standing there like a sentinel by the second igloo. Now, a lot of people have had very, very strange. The second igloo seemed to have been the epicenter of everything, all which we found out after the fact, which personally I love. We went in going virtually nothing, just a couple of bits of folklore that we had heard from Bob and others. We get back in the car, and when we get back in the car, it begins to spin like a centrifuge. And as it begins to spin, it goes transparent, like Wonder Woman's plane or something. This is all through the regression. And I look down and I see the tranny and all this kind of stuff. And suddenly I'm on what looks like a film set. Sort of Technicolor, like Wizard of Oz. The garage is there. It's called Sonny's Garage, which is weird because from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be an auto mechanic. And the powers that be talked me out of it because I scored well on my aptitude test. So like, I don't want to do that, right? So grand betrayal in my life, I think. Seriously, you should never do that to kids. So anyway, I'm thinking about a couple years later, I'm doing all this abduction research, contactee research, and Jacques Vallée says, they pull stuff from your mind to kind of fill in gaps and to get you hooked. Long story short, Ken, I guess the regression goes on for about maybe 15, 20 minutes. And basically they're saying, isn't this cool? Like, isn't this neat? And I'm going, your silo doesn't have any animals. I'm a director and I start directing the scene and I'm like, this looks phony and, you should. And so they start, you can hear on the tape, I'm going, not a good candidate, not a good candidate, not a good candidate. And so the regression therapist says, or hypnotist says, is Tanya a good candidate? I'm like, oh yeah, she's a great candidate. So my feelings are kind of hurt, but I'm the guy, I had kidney stones and I had to get a colonoscopy and I stayed awake because I wanted to see my inside. So like I have this weird fascination that overrides common sense. So they basically returned me. And then Tanya winds up more like in a classic ship on a table. This is what she saw, which she drew. Right. Notice the hand though. That is the great overlap between us. No conversation.
Fingers.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
colonization. And this weird black box that they ran over her body. Now,
Looks like
Tanya
an
being,
iPhone, man.
yeah,
It's an
kind
iPhone.
of, yeah. So, and that's what she uses. She uses an iPhone. So, but Tanya being Tanya, she says, "Is this going to take long? Because I have stuff to do." So that was our experience. So after her regression, we're sitting with close friends, and we go, what are we going to do? We're the ghost people, we're the spirit people. Now we're going to be the UFO abductee people. Like, what the hell? Abductee sounded like a really strange word.
Yeah.
Like, if you Daryl Sim, he says if you go voluntarily, you're a contactee. If you go against your will, you're an abductee. We weren't asked, but we didn't resist. I wasn't Barney Hill, with scuff marks on my on the toes of my shoes. So we just went public with it. We did an episode of our show, Into the Outer Realms, and just said we got to tell you, this is what we found out, and people were like, okay, yeah, okay. So that was it, and it was completely life changing,
Mm-hmm. And that was what year was that when you went public with it?
20, I believe it was 2020. I think it was the summer 2020. No. It had to be the summer of 2019 because it was before the lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that, like, it seems to me like a lot is changing just even in the last 5-10 years about people's openness to hearing experiences like yours. And like, were you like, I mean, back in the day you would have got ridiculed and maybe got the shit kicked out of you, but nowadays it seems like people are want to hear the story. Did you get any ridicule at all, or was it all very positive?
Tanya no longer is involved with any of this at all, and it began to hamper her life. It began to put her in a box that if
Mm,
she wanted to step out of the box, she considered going back into social services, or she's always been an entrepreneur, so she joined a business group and got so comfortable talking about this stuff, it didn't remember she was outside the box, and she got ridiculed,
mm.
and they treated her very differently. And so she said, I can't live the entire spectrum of my life because the minute I step out. But me, I'm a writer, director. I design escape rooms, and so this is kind of who I am. I've always been sort of weird. So people just go, oh yeah, this makes sense. So for her, it was a big deal.
Yeah, you do have to still be careful about who you talk to. Yeah, don't bring it up in your day job business meeting, maybe.
Right.
What? Yeah. Well, that's too bad that it affected her negatively like that.
Yeah.
Um, what I guess what do you have you retrospectively now, have you like made any sense out of what was going on?
It's you kind of you try to listen to the experts, right? All what they have said is you've probably been abducted your entire life. I don't know, but I don't think so. I know that I'm an astral traveler because I worked with a Toltec shaman who said, like, you zip around at night. Tanya did a Reiki session on me, and she called it Cthulhu, SHIT, from H.P. Lovecraft. She's like, you
Yep.
just have this sort of cosmic residue in your
Yeah.
field that
You're
needs
allowed
be
to say
cleared up.
shit on my show.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this Cthulhu shit, which needs to be cleaned out of my system. Now Tanya, on the other hand, is a lifelong abductee, and people who have read her field, quite a few, half a dozen or so, have either said, "Oh, you're fairy," or "You're Pleiadian," or "You're not from here." Whereas my family had certain powers. 3 of my 4 great grandmothers, could foretell deaths, or see the dead, or interpret dreams, or prognosticate on things. So Tanya's very much star stuff, is what we're told.
Right.
So this seemed to be now. as long as Tanya and I are together, everything's fine. She will wake up with bruises that are handprints. It happens all the time. There are things that have felt like implants. We put a Gauss meter on them. They've registered, but then they either go deeper in the body or they move. And after Dr. Lear passed, we haven't been able to find anybody we would trust enough to, go digging around inside Tanya's body, right? So she's had a lot of that. So it tracks, and it could be that I was just a passenger, right? Not a good candidate.
Sure.
I'm very highly susceptible to hypnotism. I've gone through some past life things and all. Also cleared out some things from my, we met a guy and he's like, "Oh, I do this therapeutic hypnosis." Okay. But somehow I wasn't having it. But when I'm with her, sometimes things are fine. But 6 months ago we woke up and the bottom sheet or the top sheet. So we sleep with a sheet, a light blanket, and a quilt.
Mm-hmm.
The sheet was on top of everything.
Oh.
And every once in a while, her clothes will be misbuttoned or something like that. And we're getting older, but I don't think I'm senile, so I don't think it was, I don't think it was us. So, all I know, here's my perspective, and I guess this is my message, which has gotten us not on television, if you can track this. So producers call us, they want to know the story, and they go, "So how did it destroy your life?" And I say, "We met these amazing people. We wrote 2 books. We got a show. We've traveled all over. We got to be mentored by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, like the Mick Jagger of the paranormal world, right?" So to me, it was all positive. Although we've had dark experiences in the field and things have come after, when you stare into the abyss and all of that. I guess it was just men. It's part of our life path. I've never encountered this again, not in a dream, not otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So that
that guy reminds me of the there's an anime, I'm trying to think of the name of it, Princess Mononoke. And there's a character who's a little bit like that. He's like this big, gigantic deer, like forest spirit thing. Anyway, it's a really sweet movie. You might like it. Really, and a strange storyline, which is like, this is kind of what I'm getting out of this. Is just like there's all this weird shit, and it like, what the hell? Like, what is it for? Like, and there's no answer, right? And people can speculate, whatever it is, whether it's so and so, and they're trying to do biological experimentation or DNA manipulation or whatever. And I think there's a lot of grounds for that, but like literally, like, what the hell? Like all of this other stuff, just like, why? Like, it doesn't add up.
For us, it wasn't like a Cash Landrum thing. It wasn't a MyLab, right? It wasn't a military abduction. For those of you who don't know that, or a false flag. I think we would have woken up by the igloos or something like that, woken up in our hotel room. It seemed to be an organic experience, but what that experience was, we don't know. I mean, this thing looks like a classic gray in a lot of ways. Again, those 3 fingers with the suction cups on the end, I've seen those. So you get very religious in a metaphorical sort of way. I started looking up everything, contactee, abduction, using the show as a vehicle to talk to abductees and contactees that I might not otherwise be able to talk to. Nobody is crystal clear on why it happens to them.
Right.
Nobody I've spoken to, they believe it's organic. Some of them have experienced healing. Reverend Michael Carter's been on the show. He's written a couple of books. He's been on Ancient Aliens and so forth. He was healed by these, and he saw a whole array, like Greys and Pleiades.
He saw like 8 different kinds of
the mantis and
they show up in his bedroom. I've talked to him a couple of times.
Wes Roberts. Do you know Wes Roberts? I think he's a fellow Canadian.
Oh, okay.
Wes is a cool dude. He's written a couple books, Lifetime Abductions, Very detailed.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
So okay, so now you also mentioned that so you said something about astral traveling at night. So is it kind of like a dream state? Do you find yourself somewhere else experiencing different times and places, or tell us a
That's
little bit about that?
yeah, that's a great question. I know the difference between a junk dream, which is just the flotsam and jetsam of my subconscious discharging stuff, or oh yeah, there's that thing I saw on Gilligan's Island, and
Yeah,
weirdly enough, I sent some colleagues the Anunnaki Birdman that's behind you
yeah,
today, which is very weird. So synchronicities
yeah,
for
yeah.
a project we're working on, a strange project, and I know the difference between a dream that's trying to teach me something or it's some kind of psychological message that I really need to sit, deconstruct classically and puzzle out and take something from. I know when I'm astral traveling, because all the rules go away. It's very matrix, so I just know I can do stuff. And then there's time in parallel dimensions. And when I talk to someone who spends time in parallel dimensions in other of their lives, they go, "Oh yeah, I can tell the difference too."
Mm,
But how do you explain that? All I can tell you is I know it. One of the tip-offs is when I wake up, I get really disoriented. I'm trying to figure out where the work files are and did I miss a deadline? And so I have a lot of stuff, a lot of clerical stuff going on. The weirdest one was I got a message that I had to drop what I was doing and go to this spot. And behind this tree, camouflage was like this silver box. And it was like, okay, time to go home. Like we told you someday you would get the message, and that's all I know. So those are the really 4 distinct experiences I had. The Toltec shaman said, you go astral traveling and you're like a lighthouse in the sea, and it attracts others to you. I've
okay.
done a lot of work with drum journeying, metronome, even a lot of theta and even some delta.
Okay.
Lucid dreaming, Robert Moss, and all those techniques, but I can't say that I can control it. I can't will myself to astral travel. I can't
Right.
go, oh, tonight I'm going to go into this life where I'm working on the brown file folders, and
Right.
see what that's about.
Right.
I have no control over it
do you
consciously.
do you feel like you're like living a different life, or are you more observing other stuff?
No, I'm living a very active life. So
Yeah.
in getting palm readings and card readings, stone readings, using, casting runes and all that stuff. Just trying to gather information and get other writing and communicating and storytelling. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
And depending on who you talk to, they're like, you haven't quite used it the way to like kind of break the wheel of samsara and get out of this reincarnation thing. But I'm not sold on the whole, even though I've had experiences that could be categorized as past lives, either organic, spontaneous memories or through regression or other lucid dreaming or whatever. Um, it seems that I have this work to do. I'm a
Right.
researcher. I take data, I make patterns out of it, and I package it as stories, or I package it as episodes of my show or books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you do some plays as well.
Yeah, I write just about in every storytelling genre that there is. So I write musicals and straight plays. I write novels and short stories, poems, screenplays. Um, yeah, I guess. Oh, and I design escape rooms, with a heavy historical
Right.
element.
Right.
And now the latest thing that I'm doing is immersive experiences using augmented reality, virtual reality, steeped in history, but a way to get younger generations interested into, whatever the hell the thing is the client is trying to sell. That kids are
Yeah.
going, oh, this is boring. And if it's not like a video game, like I don't want it. I want to be the hero. I
Yeah.
don't want to see some dead guy's painting. So yeah.
No, that's cool. I got some of my friends are big into musical theater, and I got playwriting in the family and stuff like that.
Cool.
If you have links, I want to link to some of your products or your projects. Tell us, is there any that we can watch online or anything like that? Or
Yeah, probably there's a couple different things that you can do. For the books, you can go to Amazon and just search my name, Joey Madia, and I have an
yeah,
author page at Amazon. Um, that's historical, paranormal, mystery. Um, my musical is being produced this coming year, out in LA. It's about the premise is what if an ambitious scientist in the early 1900s had the journals of Moreau, Frankenstein, and Jekyll. And he goes to Dr. Moreau's island and he tries to not screw up like they did because he has all their knowledge and he's smarter than them. And we're talking about you're the first person I'm telling about this. We're talking about possibly using the set as an immersive experience on its own. So a
oh,
dual
cool.
use. What do they call? Oh, they're calling it transmedia, which is very
Oh,
interesting because of transmedium, vessels,
yeah,
in
yeah,
the whole ufology world. So yeah, transmedia, like how do you make multiple products out of, and the Harry Potter, Star Wars people, they're brilliant at that.
yeah.
So that's what we're doing. And people who want to see the show Into the Outer Realms or some of my other projects, there's over 200 videos on my YouTube channel. So you just search Joey Madia or Every Day is a Story. At
Okay, cool.
Every Day is a Story. That'll take you to the YouTube. Yeah.
Great. I'll link to those underneath here.
Thank you,
But
sir.
what's the name of the play that's being worked on?
Oh, it's called Three Gothic Doctors and Their Sons, which started in let me get this right, 2013, 2014. The largest hand cut stone building in America is what is called either Weston Lunatic Asylum or the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum or Weston State Hospital.
Okay.
It's been on a lot of the big shows, Paranormal State and all that kind of stuff. Very active, very active. It's a gorgeous building. And we were the house theater company for a while. And so I
Oh,
was like, okay, if we're going to perform in in a state asylum, in an
yeah.
old state asylum, I need like the proper material. So I did a one-man Edgar Allan Poe show and played all 5 of his unreliable narrators, and Auguste Dupin sort of hosted the evening, the detective. And
That's awesome.
we ended with like what the hell happened to Poe in those last like
Right.
12, 14 hours of his life. So it was interesting. That was cool. And we did 3 Gothic Doctors. And then I'll tell you what happened. Because if there are any writers out there, they'll appreciate this. I love Sherlock Holmes. And I wanted to write a Sherlock Holmes novel,
Yeah.
like the 4 where there's okay, now we're going to break from the story and we're going to go to America and we're going to do this exotic thing with either the Molly Maguires in Chicago or the Mormons in Utah. Like he did all this really cool stuff, Doyle. And so I set out to write this Sherlock Holmes book, and it was during the lockdown and all. I had this time. And I had this total crisis one day where a voice came in and said, "What are you doing? You can't write Sherlock Holmes. You're a big giant fraud. They're all going to laugh at you." So I said, I have to write something. And so I said, let me novelize 3 Gothic Doctors. So
Nice.
that's what I did. And then I used the journalist character who tells the story of 3 Gothic Doctors as a close friend of John Watson's. So I have a Sherlock Holmes book called Sherlock Holmes and the Mystery of M. And that's available on Amazon. People seem to really like it because it's the point of view. It's John Watson's friend's point of view of Holmes and Watson.
Oh,
So,
cool. Yeah.
so I got to play with the mythos, and now it's finally it's all in the public domain, so you can
Right
play
on.
with everything. And I had adapted Hound of the Baskervilles for teenagers way before Enola Holmes. I made Sherlock Holmes died at Reichenbach Falls, and his niece wanted to take up the business. So she
Okay.
pretended to be him, and her girlfriend was Watson, and they solved Hounds of the Baskervilles. So it was done by a theater company in Pennsylvania.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I would love to sit in on a workshop or something like that. That would be amazing. But
Oh, cool. Yeah, I love the historical fiction, and truth is stranger than fiction. I really believe that.
yeah,
So you look for the gap. I have a series of pirate novels. I have 4, and I'm working on the 5th. And I go around and do pirate shows. I'm going to spend a week in Ashland, Ohio, in a couple of weeks doing an old pirate, Samuel Bellamy. And all of that, some people did it, right? Disney did it, but other people did it. Stranger Tides is actually a novel
yeah,
with this whole paranormal mystique surrounding that time, because you had the Obeah religion, you had the whole slave trade coming in, from Africa and spreading all through Europe and the Americas. The royal families were all intermarried and very weird.
yeah.
It's the rise of the Freemasons in the 1720s. Yeah, so that's really fun stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's definitely true, like what you said. You know, truth is definitely stranger than fiction, because when you're writing fiction, it has to make sense in some way. Nobody wants to read a book and then go like, "What the fuck?" at the end. Like, you got to tie it together. But real life doesn't have to do that. So
Yeah.
real life is really what the fuck, and we're like, I don't know. I just don't know.
That's right.
But
And I
yeah,
think David Lynch said that. He said fiction has to make sense and life
yes,
doesn't. Yeah.
yeah,
Right on.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to cut. And that's it was a really great chat. Awesome talking to you.
Thank you.
Perhaps we will do it again sometime, but that was a real blast. And to everyone out there, make sure you check out Joey's books and stuff. I got the links underneath here. Check it out in the description. And go hit up his YouTube channel as well. And don't forget to subscribe to his and mine. Okay, guys, catch you later.